Welcome to the Leadership and Yoga podcast, hosted by me, Shauna Kruger. And on this podcast, I'll be bringing you interviews with exceptional leaders in the yoga world alongside trainings and tips so you can experience true breakthroughs and help others do the same. Aw, this is so fun. Hello. If you're not watching the video, I'm sitting outside in my backyard of my childhood home, and I didn't say leadership and yoga because I'm not going to say that anymore. Honestly, I say that because it's a little bit awkward when you start recordings, but a little uncomfortable, and I'm a little uncomfortable right now outside, but this has been on my master plan. I just ran across some gravel here with bare feet, so nothing can stop me right now. Let me fix the sunlight there. Welcome into an episode on self-love. I guess I'm going to have some light rays in the video. You might hear some background noise. Maybe this will all be edited out with AI. I don't know. So hopefully you can hear the birds and nothing too crazy happens and you don't see me magically just change locations and finish it off there. But we're going to give it a go here. And this tree is special to me as we're talking about self-love, because literally in this very tree, I will climb up and write poetry as a child. And not necessarily the best poetry that you've ever heard in your entire life. I actually was just flipping through my old comp books. I have two of them starting in 7th grade. And it was so interesting to me because I can see how much of a deep thinker I was. And at the time, I really just pictured myself as somebody who was not that, and from that very early age, I can see the critical eye that I've had towards myself. And so I've had so many conversations this week with people about self-love and self-compassion and the inner critic. And I wanted to create an episode that feels like a strong approach to self-love. And the reason why I say strong approach is because, yes, we're going to have tangible steps, which I will give you at the end of the episode. You're also going to have my story a bit in here. But it's strong because it's self-love, and not in the sense of feeling bad for yourself if you have the inner critic going on right now. It's about getting fed up, honestly, with the self-criticizer that is inside each and every one of us. And it's about speaking up in the face of that voice and really just saying, not another day, not another minute, not another second can I continue to live in this way that is so self-critical, so limiting, so damaging. I cannot allow this to go on unchecked. And for me, one of the biggest things that's been helpful with self-love are these kind of strong hand sort of beliefs and these changes that you can make. It's not all about softening. Softening is part of it. But if you're somebody who says, that stuff doesn't work for me, for example, I love yin yoga, but there are many times when I go to yin yoga and I set an intention of self-love and I find myself just wandering because I'm softening, I'm relaxing. But there's something to be said about setting an intention when you're on a walk or you're in the gym or you're getting yourself to this level of excitement and engagement. And for me, that has been the most helpful. And so I'm speaking to that perspective. I'm not speaking against the soft approach. But if you're interested, if you've been trying to find a bit more self-love and feels like the things that you've been doing haven't been working all that well, I'm just here to offer some additional things that you can think about. And so before we get into today's episode, I have a quick announcement, which I've been announcing, but I am still super excited about it because we've got space in my upcoming retreat that is in Rio Chiripo, Costa Rica. And wow, this is a crazy moment for me to be sitting here talking to you all underneath this tree where, I don't know, I think everything kind of started in the big dreams and the ideas of one day sharing my words and all of it was here. But yes, that experience, this is my 4th retreat, and that experience is open. If you enjoy what I've got going on here on the podcast, you enjoy and you feel like what I say resonates, this is an incredible opportunity to get around other people who these messages and this energy is also resonating with. And the act of investing in yourself in that way, in getting into that sort of experience and that sort of space is life-changing. I've done it many times myself. I have always thought that it's worth it. It's worth it no matter what you end up learning. Sometimes what you get out of it is completely different than what you were expecting. But regardless, I want to open that door for you. If you are curious, I'm going to leave the link in the show notes. And please also take a moment to rate and share my podcast if you haven't already. It has grown 30% since February. So let's keep that going. And this is good karma. If you take this moment to do just a nice little act of kindness for me here, I strongly believe that your own projects and your own endeavors will also have that same support coming back to you. In fact, send me your projects. If you have projects, I will rate, I will listen and review to as many of them as I can. But I really, really appreciate that. And in terms of announcements about the podcast that we have, you might have noticed that this week we have Interview Wednesdays officially. So we've got 2 coffee chats, you and me, scheduled each and every week. We've got Wednesday interviews with another person that we get to learn from, and then Fridays are solo one-on-one episodes. You can count on me every single week, I promise you. And also, I have a newsletter. I think that's the other thing that I wanted to say. I have a newsletter. I sent out the first newsletter, so you haven't missed much. If you want to join and get an additional little sort of behind the scenes and also an overview of the things that I have going on, it's once per month. So I promise I'm not going to be mailing you all the time. Unless there's something super exciting, I might break that rule. But in general, once a month is what you can expect. And you can head over to my website and sign up there to my newsletter if you want to join Leadership and Yoga Fam. Yeah. There's like 700 of us on Spotify, at least. So if you are ready, I'm going to skip that last announcement actually till the end. If you are ready to get into the idea of self-love, loving yourself more, having more self-compassion, let's do it. I've been reading a book called Self-Compassion, literally just self-compassion, and I'm completely blanking on the author, Kristen, I believe. Going to link it in the show notes for you. It's a really good read. I have not finished it, but this was a book that kind of spontaneously came up, and it was very perfect timing and also a super moment of synchronicity for me because I reconnected with my college roommate, as in the very first person that I lived and shared a room with ever, because I'm an only child. And so the very first person that really ultimately was a sister to me, Danielle. Shout out to Danielle if you're listening. I don't know if you listen to my podcast, but we were talking on the dock, and this is probably the first time we've got to hang out in person in about a year. And we realized that we had just picked up the same book, the self-compassion book, and we were on the same chapter because we remember that we're on the same exact activity. And you know how when books give you an activity to do at the end of the chapter, and then you feel sort of guilty if you don't do that activity, and then they kind of just start stacking up, and then you end up not reading more because you're, supposed to have written a letter to yourself and to like 5,000 other people, and it just feels like a lot, and you would like to keep reading, but you can't because now you feel guilty. It's kind of one of those scenarios, but I will tell you, I decided I'm going to get serious about self-compassion because this is something that I have super struggled with my entire life, and in many ways I still do. I have made leaps and bounds, massive quantum leaps in this department, but it is something that I feel like in order to get to the next level, it's something that I need to unlock, and I don't need to perfect, because again, we're going to talk about getting away from perfection, but it's something that I want to invest my time and energy into. So anyways, as we're talking about this book, I was reminded of one of the quotes that I really like. And this quote says, "What is the self inside us, the silent observer, severe and speechless critic, who can terrorize us and urge us on to futile activity, and in the end, judge us still more severely for the errors into which his own reproaches drove us?" I'm going to say it one more time. What is the self inside us, the silent observer, severe and speechless critic, who can terrorize us and urge us on to futile activity, and in the end, judge us still more severely for the errors into which his own reproaches drove us. This quote is so beautiful because it reminds us that the things that we're criticizing ourselves for, the things that we're getting so mad at ourselves for, or so disappointed in ourselves for, are often driven by that same disappointment, that same critical eye. And for me, what I've realized when I went to record this episode, what I've learned is that the self-critic inside me, this inner critic, is causing the exact thing that it's hoping to avoid. What it wants is for me to be this easygoing, speak on the spot, fluid, not rigid, doesn't need to be prepared, is always on, is always relaxed, always intuitive. And what it's causing me to do is contract entirely around this need to be perfect and around this super unreachable ideal of the person who never stumbles, or the person who never has a bad angle, who just glows constantly. And it's funny because you know that if you could release that critic, and you could actually let yourself just be okay with whatever comes out of your mouth when you get up onto the stage, and you would actually perform better in many cases. And yet for some reason we can't do that. And one of the major breakthroughs that I had is that it's not about then in turn hating on the self-critic. It's not about hating on yourself for being self-critical, or for not loving yourself enough, or for not being compassionate enough. It's understanding, okay, there is a part of me that is self-critical because that part of me knows that I am, in my case, deeply sensitive. It knows that I feel things really deeply, and it doesn't want me to be hurt. But at the same time, what it doesn't understand is that in those moments of pain, there is also growth. And through exposure, and through actually letting myself feel things and actually experience things, even if it's a bit risky, it's like cold exposure. It gets easier with time. There is always difficulty in the beginning. And what I've realized is that the inner critic often doesn't want any difficulty, and yet it causes all of the difficulty. And that's mind-blowing to me. That's very, very interesting. There's something energetically really cool about talking about this as I am right now, because after spending a night in my old bedroom, and what a crazy blessing, by the way, and what a rarity that my parents still live in the same house that I grew up in. It's kind of an odd sensation, I'm not gonna lie, because you can easily just kind of step into these past emotions. And I just picked up 2 of my old journals, and as I was kind of reading through them, I felt all of the emotions that I was feeling at that time. I kind of thought that I would think what I was feeling at the time is silly now that it's past. And that's not really true. There were really hard times. Hard times in suburbia. It can really happen. Everything is subjective. And the thing about it is that hard times create strong people, and strong people create good times. And eventually good times can create complacency. And then that complacency again creates hard times, and the cycle continues. So everything is a polarity. It is only natural that we have the inner critic. So you don't need to destroy the inner critic. You don't need to hate the inner critic. I don't understand why it is that balance is so hard for us to grasp as humans. I feel like everybody wants balance. We know, oh, it's all about balance. Hear that said all of the time. And it's the same with the balance of self-compassion and self-love and the inner critic. I've read many a self-help book, especially because this is my job and my career. And I can tell you that, number one, don't believe everything that you read in self-help books. I have found a lot of unhelpful self-help books and that they're all over the place. So trust your gut and your intuition. But I've read many self-help books, even some of the most famous in the world, who talk about the inner critic and this nature within us to view ourselves so intensely and this pain that we have inside as almost like a insect that needs to be killed and squashed and removed and shown the light so that it instantly dissolves. And it's like, while it may be true that this inner critic would dissolve when it's exposed to the light, I just simply do not believe that we can have light without the dark. Again, imagining a society in which everything was exactly as we wanted it to be and you knew exactly how everything was going to unfold, that's not by definition really life, in my opinion. So we could go down that tangent and I'm going to avoid going down that rabbit hole. But basically, we do need to be self-aware and we do need to self-evaluate. But what happens is that usually that tendency gets out of control. It really gets out of control because of the world in which we are living. It's not like there's something wrong with you. It's generally speaking what we've been exposed to in words and beliefs and things that we have adopted because we are steeped in them based on where you grew up, who you hang around, what you're exposed to online. I often wonder what my life would be like if I was not exposed to Instagram, for example. And the Instagram yogis changed my life, and they've also, Instagram as a whole has been a major source of comparison for me. So when you think about this nature to be self-critical and to be hard on yourself, and at the same time what exists underneath that, the self-love, I have always been drawn to a strong approach. And so if I think about even who I looked for and who I enjoyed being around in terms of coaches and teachers, I was always drawn and still am drawn to. It's kind of weird to say this now that I am thinking about it. When I wrote it down, it didn't seem so weird, but I'm really drawn, to be honest with you, to intense, usually male or masculine leaning leaders who can sort of combat the intensity of which I feel that my own self-critic, that nature exists in that world of the strong and the masculine. I view it almost like as this beast. And it's not bad. We all need a little beast. We all need that little energy within us. But I've looked for something that was a match for that. And so to give you just the first little bit of how we can take a strong approach, even if you don't want to find an intense male coach, that's not what I'm recommending. I'm just saying that that's something that I've found actually rivals with. And I think it draws my awareness to what my own tendencies are. And that can be really insightful and really helpful as well. But instead of taking a soft approach, you can take a strong approach even in just setting aside time to take care of yourself beforehand and intuitively, because we can't always plan when we're going to need to give ourselves whatever version of comfort or self-hug, this little moment of self-love that it is that we need. And that's different than doing it because you feel bad for yourself. You can take the proactive approach, even if it's in the moment, and you can say, I'm going here on the offensive rather than on the defensive. It's not, I'm going to give myself this moment of rest because I'm so weak and I'm so sad and I just really feel like crap, but I also feel mad at myself for feeling like this because I should be stronger. No. Instead, right there, you say, I'm going to give myself rest because I trust in my capabilities. I know my value and I deserve to show up well rested. I deserve to take time off, even if it's not what I plan to do. And I know that that will enable me to show up at maybe not 100%, but maybe at 80% instead of at the 40% that I'm currently feeling. Right here, I'm going to ask you to change your definition of extraordinary. Extraordinary does not mean perfect. In fact, extraordinary usually has bad and it has good. If you've ever watched, for example, people free diving or free climbing, I don't know about you, but when I watch somebody free diving, it is absolutely extraordinary. And yet it doesn't make me feel perfect. What it makes me feel is a mixture of awe and also a mixture of like, holy shit, I feel like I'm going to throw up on behalf of these people because I'm so nervous for them. I watched the movie Free Solo. This is a documentary or it's a movie. I don't know. It's a real story. I guess it's a documentary. Don't need to get hung up on that detail. But the movie or documentary Free Solo, Alex climbing El Capitan, must watch that, by the way. If you need a little bit of motivation and inspiration in your life, watch that documentary. You will not be disappointed. And I watched this when I was on the plane and I felt all of the emotions. I was already feeling all of the emotions because I was going to visit a new place. And this just intensified it. It didn't make me feel relaxed or perfect or anything like that. In fact, I probably would have felt much more comfortable just listening to soothing music, but is that really perfect either? I don't know. So change your definition, even if you're going for extraordinary, which by the way, you don't need to go for extraordinary. I enjoy pursuing excellence. I think that having a purpose and having progress does also help you feel better. But that doesn't mean that you need to go for it, but change the definition. Even if you are going for extraordinary or excellent, neither of those things mean perfect. It is not the way it works. And so one of the other things that you can do right off the bat is to stop trusting other people's evaluations and start trusting your own intuition. Listen to your gut, silence your mind. I believe that was the Billboard message that Sasha gave this week. And probably these Friday episodes will have more and more tidbits from interviews. It's the way that it will fall. But when she said that, I thought it was brilliant. And also you ask, how? I would love to do it. It sounds great. Listen to the gut. I want to listen to the gut. I want to silence the mind, the doubt, the critic. The problem is again a chicken or the egg sort of problem, because it takes self-trust a lot of times in order to access the intuition that will bring you towards your true nature. I hope that makes sense. So there's kind of two ways to summarize it for you in a different way. There's two ways I view of living life, and you could be on any extreme. There is the way of living that you are chasing the standards that are already set out for you. This is what I did all throughout high school. I'm not going to tell the boring blah, blah, blah story again about straight A's and varsity sports every season, and never really asking myself why did I want to do any of those things? I don't know. What metric am I trying to make here? And then there's the polar opposite extreme, which is trusting entirely and understanding your true inner nature, which is, in my opinion, kind of what we're here to do. So maybe it would be a little bit boring if we could just already do that perfectly all of the time. And even if you're somebody who's really good and really intuitive in some areas, I'm willing to bet that there are many areas that you're actually deeply influenced by people that and standards and things that you feel like you must have, and you might not even realize it. And so one of the ways that I believe we can start to trust ourselves more is by giving ourselves consciously small reasons to start to trust. I think that self-trust has a lot to do with self-love. And so it's not always about accomplishing something, but it is about proving something to yourself, because it gives the mind something to hold on to. And so I'm not going to say that you should set a high goal and go for that goal. And then when you get to that goal, then you start to trust yourself and you start to love yourself. No, this can be something as simple as, I am going to massage my face today, or I'm going to look in the mirror and I'm going to say, I love my beautiful face. For as much difficulty as it gives, I'm going to do it. I'm going to say it a couple of times until it starts to feel less awkward, because the BS meter goes off real intensely when you start to make changes like that. But the more that you get familiar with it, the more that ultimately it shapes and changes how we're feeling. But just that very act in itself, whether or not you believe it at first, gives you a reason to trust in yourself. When I say that I'm going to do something, I can do it. And guess what? You are in control. And the moment that you realize that you are in control, everything with self-love changes. Because then suddenly it isn't about hitting standards. It's suddenly not about things that you can't control, that, I would be better if XYZ hadn't happened to me, or if I had this other capability or this other beauty or this other talent that I really wish that I had. You don't need any of that. Those are things that, yes, you can fixate on what you can't control, but you can control. You are in control. I had this realization this morning as I was writing my notes for this podcast and drinking a cup of coffee here in the backyard, that it's almost like a person who is drunk, like the state of being drunk and the state of being in a mental state that you feel like you can't control. And I know it. Probably happens to me at least once a month, where you get in a really weird mood, you start to spiral, and you feel like, man, I cannot control this. This is beyond me. And you may be right. Because in the moment that a person is super drunk, for however much they want to, or they try, they cannot undrunk themselves. They cannot clear that state and come back to a sober state in that very instant. But you know what they can control? They control the input. They control the drinks that they are drinking. In the very same way, we control the inputs that are coming in, whether that's through what we're choosing to do, the rest that we're choosing to give ourselves, the space, the studies, the books that we're choosing to read, the things that we are allowing ourselves to feel fully so we can just move on after, the things that we are fixating on but never letting ourselves feel completely. Excuse me. But you are in control. And everything changes once you start taking radical responsibility. Radical responsibility, to me, is one of the greatest forms of self-love. Because it's not, oh, woe's me. Why is it that I didn't get given teeth as white as the celebrities? Or why is it that I had exes that betrayed me or friends that betrayed me? It's also not, on the other extreme, it's all my fault. It's all my fault that these people betrayed me. I must be bad because these people betrayed me. See, you're still giving away the power, if you notice there. What is your power and what radical responsibility is, and now what? Okay, we are here. Now what? In a really true experiment that shows that you are in control based on your beliefs is the drowning rat experiment. And yes, it is honestly as cruel as it sounds, but these little rats died for this, so we might as well take what they taught us. And basically, the experiment was to see if domesticated rats were inherently weaker than wild rats. And that's what they thought beforehand. The word is slipping me. The hypothesis. There we go. Science. The hypothesis was exactly that the wild rats were going to fight hard. They were going to be stronger, and they would fight, essentially. Their will to live would be stronger than the domesticated rat. What happened, it was actually the opposite entirely, because what happened was that the domesticated rats fought harder for their own survival. They were willing to hope that they would be rescued. Because they had been cared for before, it gave them hope that it would happen again for them. And the wild rats didn't necessarily have that hope. Is essentially what came from this is that where individuals or animals have hope, they have a higher level of perseverance, and they have a will to keep fighting if they feel like there's a chance of success or there's a chance of rescue. If they don't have hope, then they won't. If you won't start believing that there is a way to find self-love, no matter how far you have to hike, you will never start. And if you do not picture yourself as different than you are, you will remain the same. So you've got to give yourself a fighting chance and decide right now that it is possible to love yourself 10 times more than you do now, 100 times more than you do now, maybe 99% times more than you do now. And what the hell, if it's not perfect, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be better. That's the thing. You don't need to get caught up on the perfection now of loving thyself. It's not like that. The other thing that I think can be a sticking point for us is not thinking before reacting in the face of moments that you feel self-criticism. Yes, we do learn from the things that we fall short at, or the moments that we feel disappointed in ourselves, but it's most important in those moments to comfort yourself. That is the moment that you most deserve the sense of comfort and reassurance rather than being kicked down over and over again, which I'll talk about in just a second when we get to the tangible part. But as I was going through and reading my journal this morning, I noticed something really interesting. And after I had a moment of really intense heartbreak, which has happened to me multiple times in my life, to be honest with you, multiple times, but one that was particularly complex. I'm not going to give you it was not a romantic comedy moment. It was traumatic romantic moment in my life. I changed my handwriting. I changed the way that I drew my A's to have the little fun top. And I eventually changed it back because inevitably it was causing me more work to write in a way that I thought looked cooler or something. But it's really interesting to me. And as I saw that, I was like, wow, what is our desire to react to these things that happen to us, or these moments where we feel that we fall short and therefore we must make ourselves better in some way? Why would I feel the need to change my handwriting? I mean, some people cut their hair or whatever. We all do this, right? And I think that's different than learning. Honestly, I think that's falling into the trap of not feeling good enough. There's a really big difference, and this is huge in the yoga world, and a lot of people come to yoga because of this reason. So you probably already know this, but there's a really big difference between working out because you love your body and you honor it and it's your temple, and working out because you don't feel good enough and you don't feel worthy in your current state and you hate how you look. Hate, this word. The opposite of self-love, in my opinion, self-hate, self-harm, whether that's mental or it's physical. Self-harm is like an anger outburst. That's what I've come to realize. It's like an anger outburst. It's like wanting to punch a hole in a wall, but directing that pain and that force at yourself because you perceive that you are the cause of the pain and of the feelings that you feel like you just have to release because it's too much. And so you target it at yourself because you really perceive it to be internal. But again, who shaped your expectations? What shaped your expectations? We are all these tea bags. I love the tea bag metaphor. It makes me feel better whenever I feel too hung up on something. It's like, remember, you are just steeping in whatever is around you, whatever society has given you, whatever you're exposed to. That is what is making up these sort of beliefs. And so choose to steep yourself in some other messages, right? Which we already talked about. But of course, it's going to make you more messy and even more upset and more chaotic and fail at more projects, quote unquote, when you have somebody yelling at you, yourself, when you live literally with somebody yelling at you all of the time. You can picture it like a dog and an angry owner, just the owner just yelling at the dog, kicking the dog, and it's sad, and it should make you sad. I think that is kind of the first ounce of self-compassion that you might find. What I found, and I thought about all of the times that I've stood in front of the mirror and just been so uncontent with myself. Even in the moments when I had literally no worries in the world, I saw my 7th grade summer to-do list or things I wanted to do. It was like, learn to French braid, learn to type, get an eyelash curler, learn how to do eyeshadow. It was like that, and that was it. That was what my goals were for the summer, which you could say good for me for making some goals. But all of those times when you're so young, you're so vibrant, and all these things, you have all these opportunities ahead of you, and yet you can still just fall into the trap since day one. Not good enough. If we're not good enough now, are we ever going to be? Are we ever going to let ourselves be? And we know that nagging, it doesn't work. Guess what? I can give this in my couple of years of marriage. It's a little complex. I had a paper marriage and then we had our actual wedding. But in my, roughly 2 to 4 years of marriage, I can tell you, as a married woman, nagging doesn't work. Nagging is not effective. And so why do we do that? Why do we do that to our partners, whether we're male or female or whatever, or parent-child relationships? Why do we nag? We think that it's going to make it better. And what it does is the exact opposite. And that's what's happening when the inner critic is nagging you over and over again, is that the opposite ends up happening because you end up focusing on that thing that you don't want. And we only end up nagging, in my opinion, when we're desperate. When we think, okay, this person is not going to learn on time, they're going to seriously fuck some shit up, and there's going to be no turning back. We are only desperate when we feel like we don't have time. Time is a big topic, honestly. But if we don't slow down now, we're going to spend years fighting this, and we're never going to feel like we have time. So you see here again, it's all about perception. It's really all about perception, and that can give you a sense of control. The things that do work that you can focus on are leading by example, inspiring yourself or inspiring others. So taking an inspiration approach. You can reward yourself, acknowledge yourself for those small steps, those small wins. Currently, I am in the process of trying this out because I don't generally do a rewards-based system for myself. There may be certain rewards that are just kind of woven in naturally, but I'm going on morning walks, walking every morning to try something different, to get my energy up a little bit sooner. And I'm doing it for 2 weeks. And I really, really need new walking/running shoes because my secret goal, I can't believe I'm saying this, my secret goal is to get back into running, which I have not desired since I quit my competitive distance running, which I did for 6+ years. But I have a secret goal and I want new shoes. And I almost did the classic thing where you get excited and you're like, yeah, I'm going to buy a Stairmaster for my house. It's great. And I'm going to walk on it every day, right? I almost was like, I'm going to go down. I'm going to buy myself some nice shoes, live close to the brooks. I can go directly there. It would be very easy. It would be very convenient. It would be very fun, very immediate gratification. And I said, no, you're going to walk for 2 weeks. And at the end of those 2 weeks, I'm going to give myself a new pair of shoes. And I know that I'm going to make it. I have that trust. But those are so much more effective than buying yourself the shoes and then feeling guilty because you don't go on a walk and then nagging yourself like, oh man, you really should have gone on a walk this morning. Now you're probably not even going to do it tomorrow. And then guess what? You're probably not going to do it tomorrow because you're telling yourself you're already a failure and you already just rolled over, gave up. So leading by example, inspiring yourself, looking for people who inspire you rather than discourage you. Seeing your own progress is another one. This is why I think that it's helpful to zoom out and remember that, yes, what we want is important. However, we are very tiny and we are a part of something much, much bigger than ourselves. That can be reassuring to people. That can be kind of like a first awakening. And actually, on the topic of other people, what we criticize in others is very commonly the things that we criticize most about ourselves. And the minute that you start doing that sort of analysis and thinking about how much judgment is being passed around for different things, it's kind of like you have to feel it in order to heal it. So then you're getting this deep awareness, this constant awareness. And something that I would criticize myself really heavily for is that I didn't feel like I had enough empathy for other people. I'd been told that by many high school friendships, that I didn't have empathy or I didn't care. I wasn't caring. I wasn't there. And of course not, because I had zero empathy for myself. I didn't know what it meant to be empathetic to myself. And honestly, by default, I definitely have been a person who judges constantly, judging not only just people, but situations. It's an evaluation. It's a natural tendency that we have as almost like a survival instinct, which is good, bad, evil, pure, dirty, perfect. And you just go through safe, unsafe, and you judge, label. And all of those things are happening kind of like running in the background about yourself. And the thing that yoga teaches that I found so reassuring is that things are. They just are. Doesn't mean everything happens for a reason necessarily or for the greatest reason for you. I like to believe that. You don't have to, but it's definitely a much more fun way, at least for me, to go through life, believing that things are unfolding for that reason. But what if things just are? What if they are? I was reminded of this practice of feeling all of your senses before then being able to move beyond them. Pratyahara, or sense withdrawal. In order to move beyond your senses, you have to first become completely aware of them. And so you can do that little practice. And I love teaching this when I teach classes that have time for meditation, is to start out by noticing what you can feel. Noticing the ground that you're on. My feet are literally in the earth. What an honor. What a privilege to be able to do my work barefoot outside. The air around you, whether it's sunny or whether it's raining and cold and crappy, whatever, you can feel it. The taste, the sense of hearing, vision, the smell, all of it, even the subtle energetic elements of it, becoming so deeply aware of them. And then realizing that it's incredible that the brain has the capability to meditate and has the ability to move beyond the senses. So what are we capable of? We don't even know. I feel like I know nothing. You know nothing, really. And that's part of the magic of it. I was reminded of a story that it's a very simple, it's not really a story, but it's a very simple analogy or metaphor that my dad shared with me when I was little, when people will make fun of me or whatever. So you got to let it roll off of you like water off of a duck. Let it roll down and off. And as the duck lets the water roll down and off of its body, so too can we let the inner critic exist in its own right and roll down and off. We can feel it as it touches our body, and yet let it be in passing, in movement back down into the water around us. It's kind of the way that I understand my own relationship with self-love and self-compassion. On the other side, self-awareness, self-criticism, is that we don't have to let it get into this thing where we're trapping our own head underwater and finding ourselves in the realm of self-hate. It's, yes, we do have to dive down underneath the water. It is part of life. Everything is a polarity. Everything is a paradox. And yet when we come back up to the surface, that all rolls off, and then we get to enjoy our moment in the sun. That's what I see. So let's get to the tangible. This is the tangible steps that you can take if you want to move more into self-love. So grab your pen if you don't already have your pen. And this first one is one of the exercises that I actually got from the self-compassion book that I didn't want to do because it felt like a lot of work, but I did it and it was really impactful. And I'm here to tell you that it can be short and quick. And the idea of it is that you're going to set out 2 different chairs. And you're going to sit in one chair as a self-critic, and you're going to criticize the shit out of yourself. All of the things you don't like, all the things that worry you, all of the different things that you find that you're just constantly saying to yourself. Let all of those things go there. Then you're going to sit in the other chair as the person who's being criticized, and you're going to tell the self-critic how that makes you feel. Wow, I feel really down after that. I feel discouraged. I feel depressed. I feel hopeless because you're always telling me that and you're not giving me a way out. You don't believe in me. Get all of that out. And then you're going to stand up from both of the chairs as the observer, which you are the observer. You are the awareness. That's it. That's the real you, which is the beauty. And you're going to look at both of these parts of you and tell them both how you're feeling about them. And this is where I realized, wow, self-critic, you're getting the opposite of what you want to happen because of your fear. But I also understand that you want to protect me. As the part of me that's being criticized, I give empathy and say, yeah, it would be really hard to show up when you're hearing that message every day. But, or yes, and what do you need now in order to move forward on a different foot and to be the bigger person, I guess you could say. The second recommendation, I've got 3 recommendations for you, is print out a picture of little you, even if you don't have one for whatever reason. A photo of a child, literally, will do it. Because something biologically, I don't know what it is, but you hang up a child photo of you, and you visualize yourself when you were that age, and you remember, wow, I am just doing the best I can. And it encourages you to speak more softly, just a little bit kinder, a little bit more accepting to yourself. And I hang that somewhere like in the bathroom where you go to put on your makeup in the morning or wash your face, and you see that and it reminds you, I'm just doing the best I can. At the core, this is me. This has always been me. And it can really foster a bit more compassion towards yourself. Number 3, this one is a little bit more work, but I find this one to be really helpful as well. And it's to write a letter to yourself as if it was coming from somebody who loves you unconditionally, or some pet or some animal that loves you unconditionally, because animals are beautiful examples of love. Unless you have a cat like mine that pushes you away when you try to pick it up. Just kidding. She's sweet. Abigail Jane is a sweetie. But anyways, I got a little distracted there. What you're going to do is think about these principal flaws. So in the things that you criticize yourself for when you're sitting in the chair of the criticizer, you know what they are. Those parts of yourself that you're not proud of. You're not proud of them. And you're going to write a letter from this other person addressing those concerns. And you're going to give all of the empathy, all of the words of encouragement, acceptance that you can imagine that they would say if they could speak to you. Or in a lot of cases, if they knew that you were feeling like this inside. Yeah. A lot of times people don't know. You have no idea. But I want to end by saying, number 1, you're not alone because you got me. And you've got literally every other human on earth, because I know that this is a big topic. And the other thing is that, as I mentioned earlier, hard times make strong people. And so if you are in this moment of hard time right now, you're in the shit of the shit, know that you can say every day, I am getting stronger. Even if I still have more uphill days to come, every day I'm getting stronger. I know it. I can feel my mental muscle building as I go through this. And know that it's okay to feel disappointed in yourself. You must, at some points in your life, feel disappointed in yourself. And yet, you must also comfort yourself rather than punish yourself in those moments. The more that you let yourself feel, the more that you're going to learn. And know that you are extremely complex. I mean, you are a human being. If a lab rat can learn to have hope and to fight on and avoid damaging behaviors, so too can you. I really believe it. There is no excuse. There is no excuse. Seriously. It's not somebody's honking their horn in approval. There's no excuse, you guys. You've got this, and I believe in you. So send me the emoji of the rat. Actually, now Spotify just launched comments officially in an easier manner to use. So comment the emoji of the rat, or you can comment a rat on my most recent post on Instagram too, and then I'll know. It's like the secret sign. Who's a listener? Who's in the club? Send me the emoji of a rat, and I wish you all the love, all the power, and I will see you in the next episode. Ciao, ciao. Thanks for being here in my outdoor chat. I hope that the environment wasn't too distracting for you. Bye. If you enjoyed this episode of the Leadership and Yoga podcast, please take a moment to subscribe and also to drop me a rating. It's extremely helpful, and I'll catch you in the next episode.